Chapter 9, Triumphs and Defeats. Dr. Rabbit, Dr. Rabbit. I looked out of the dispensary window and saw the head fisherman from Kakiat village with 17 of his men approaching the gate. Good morning to you all. How many of you are sick today? I called out, half in fun. It's just me, Doctor, just me, called the head fisherman. I've got a tooth that I want pulled out. As I took in the situation, I caught the picture of a man who expected to have a great operation and had brought his 17 men along to assist. So I straightened up and said to myself, "All right, my good man, a big operation you shall have." I stood in the doorway and welcomed him in as one chief would welcome another, then seated him on my very best seat. I stationed his 17 men all around the room. To one man I gave a towel, to another the absorbent cotton, to another a bundle of bamboo Schwab sticks, another held a glass of water, another the permanganate, another the oil of cloves, and still another held my tray containing my lance and my forceps. I stationed 2 at his head to hold his shoulders and stroke his arms. I stationed 2 more to hold and stroke his legs. Then I took up my position right in front of him. I called for the oil of cloves and a Schwab. The men holding these things stepped forward as if they had been trained all of their lives to do it. "Now, open your mouth," I said. The chief opened his mouth and pointed to the tooth. It was very loose. I could have pulled it out with my fingers. But that would never do. I painted all around the tooth with the oil of cloves. "That's hot, isn't it?" I asked. "Ugh," he grunted. "You've had trouble with this tooth for several months, haven't you?" I continued. "Ugh, ugh," he agreed. "And you haven't slept pleasantly for 3 or 4 nights. "Ugh, that's right," he nodded, and his confidence in me as a dentist was increasing with every grunt. I called for my instrument tray. I selected the right forceps for that particular tooth, and with a professional flourish, took a hold on the offending member. At that identical moment, however, the good man suddenly noticed that his tooth didn't ache anymore. The oil of cloves was doing its magic work. So he decided not to get his tooth pulled out after all, but to buy a bottle of this magic medicine instead. Up went his 2 hands to grasp my hand and prevent the pulling till he could explain. But as he jerked my hand, the tooth came out. With another flourish, I gave the tooth to the man with the towel and told him to take it home, dry it, and hang it by a string on the back of the door for a souvenir. Then I dropped 2 crystals of permanganate in a glass of water and had the patient wash his mouth out. I can't remember seeing a more pleased patient in all of my life. All the way home, he showed everybody he met the place where the tooth had been and told everyone that Dr. Rabbit was the greatest dentist in the whole wide world. The next day, he sent me a present of a big fish that must have weighed 15 pounds. And on his history sheet, I wrote, "Paid in full." It may have been a week or a month after this elating experience that another dear old man knocked on the dispensary door one morning after breakfast and said, "Dr. Rabbit, I want to get a tooth pulled out." "Where do you live?" I asked. He named a village about 10 miles away. He had walked 10 miles before breakfast to get his tooth pulled out. It must have been giving him a great deal of agony. I invited him in, set him on a stool, and began my preparation. On my silver-colored tray, I placed my syringe and the Novocaine. When the man saw the needle, his eyes opened wide and he said, "Oh, oh." Next, I placed a lance and an elevator on the tray. The man's eyes opened wider and wider, and again he said, "Oh, oh." Finally, I selected 2 forceps and put them on the tray, and once more he said, "Oh, oh." Then I slipped into my white doctor's coat and said, "All right, Uncle, I am ready now. Just open your mouth and let me get to work." But the sight of all those instruments terrified him, and he covered his mouth with both hands, shook his head, and said, "Mmm." I explained that after the first prick of the needle, he wouldn't feel any more pain. He shook his head harder than before, and with his mouth still held tight shut, kept saying, "Mmm." Suddenly I thought of something that might build up his confidence. I went to my cupboard and took down a small jar of dried teeth that I had pulled and put in a bottle to help convince people that I really could pull some teeth. I rattled them in front of him and said, "Don't be scared, Uncle. Look, I pulled all these teeth and not one of them hurt. Now come on, open your mouth and let me pull yours." Was all I could get out of him. Nurse Pinkflower tried her hand at persuading him to open up. The other patients who were there waiting for their treatments all tried, but it was no good. The man who walked 10 miles before breakfast because he wanted to get his tooth pulled out walked 10 miles home again with his aching tooth still in his head because he was not willing to open his mouth and let me pull it. Dr. Rabbit, begged a man one morning in the rainy season. "Please bring Mama Rabbit to see my wife. She had a hard time giving birth to her baby. The baby didn't live, and now my wife has a very high fever." Only too well did we recognize the symptoms. Willing to do all we possibly could, we stepped into the motor launch, went 2 miles downriver, then walked through 2 more miles of the nastiest, stickiest mud to the poor man's village. As we climbed up the bamboo ladder, we noticed 2 or 3 old women sitting on the veranda with a hopeless expression on their faces. I joined them and tried to cheer them up while Mama Rabbit and Pink Flower went inside to see the sick woman. Suddenly, I realized that all was quiet inside the room. Very quiet. Too quiet. In half an hour, Mama Rabbit and Pink Flower came out. Their faces were pale and sad. "Too late, I'm afraid," whispered Mama Rabbit. "We have given her a treatment and have made her a little more comfortable, but the poor thing, maybe they did their best to apply heat to her abdomen. They heated a stone, wrapped it in a blanket, and put that on her, but she didn't feel any better, so they made the stone hotter and still hotter. Then they left off the blanket, and the poor woman has a terrible burn all over her stomach. Now it is infected. I wish you could have brought her to the dispensary as soon as you saw she was having trouble," I said to the husband. "Oh, doctor, what could we do? So many people, one saying this and one saying that, and the witch doctor saying the signs were not good. It is so far to carry a sick person through the mud." The poor man was so sad. All the way home through the 2 miles of that sticky mud we were quiet. Very quiet. Too quiet. We were still quiet 2 days later when we learned that the poor woman had passed away, and we were very, very sad. Dr. Rabbit, called another man on another day. "Please put a splint on the arm of my little son, Mao Tong." He fell off the bullock wagon, and the wagon wheel ran over his arm and broke both the bones. "How long ago?" I asked. 15 days, answered the father. 15 days, I said anxiously. "Where is he now?" "He's coming," said the father, pointing towards the gate. I looked up and saw a 12-year-old boy with a dirty rag around his arm walking painfully towards the dispensary. Suddenly I was aware that I was more than seeing him. I was smelling him, and he smelled like something dead. Gently I removed the dirty rag. There was something dead. Both of the bones between his elbow and wrist had been broken, and they poked out through the skin. The wound had become infected, and now the hand and the part of the forearm below the break were black and dead, beginning to slough away. I was horrified, but worse than that, there were definite signs of blood poisoning setting in above the break. "You must take him to the government hospital," I said definitely. "The doctor will have to amputate his arm." "No, no," pleaded the father. "We do not want to go to the government hospital. Their medicine is good, but it is not mixed with love. If the arm must be cut off, we want you to do it." "If you had come 15 days ago, maybe we could have saved his arm," I urged. "But we couldn't come until we had sacrificed to the evil spirits, and it took so long to gather the family all together. Please, Dr. Rabbit, won't you do it?" How I wished for Dr. Bear at that moment. But I think you have already guessed it. Dr. Bear was too good of a man to just be an assistant missionary, and by this time he had been transferred to a new district in the hill country near Tagu. So it was just Dr. Rabbit and Pink Flower, and of course, God too. I must not forget to mention that God was always with us. In an hour it was all over, and Mao Tong, smelling sweet as a daisy, lay smiling on his mat. "Dr. Rabbit, Dr. Rabbit," called a middle-aged woman on another sunshiny day. "Please look at my forehead." I looked and found that she had a wen, or a fatty tumor as big as a small hen's egg on her forehead. "Well," I said, "what do you want me to do about it?" "No medicine that we can put on that will make it disappear." "I know," she said. "I want you to cut it out." "That wouldn't be too hard, Auntie," I said, "but I am all out of Novocaine just now. I will be going to the city for supplies at the end of the month. Please come next month and I'll cut it out for you." "Next month?" "Yes." "Please do it now, Doctor." "Auntie, it would hurt a lot without Novocaine." "Hurt? Well, how long would it take you?" 20 long minutes, I replied with a meaningful smile. 20 minutes, she said thoughtfully. Then suddenly she lay down on the examining table, saying, "All right, Dr. Rabbit, go ahead and cut. I promise you I won't move for 20 minutes. "But it will hurt," I objected. "I've been ugly for 20 years," she said. "It will be worth 20 minutes of hurting to become pretty." "Do you really mean it?" I gasped. "Of course I mean it," she insisted. "Here, give me a folded handkerchief to bite on." I gave her the handkerchief. She put it between her teeth. Her hands grasped the sides of the table. She nodded her head and mumbled, "I'm ready."
For 20 minutes she did not move while I cut that wen out and sewed up the incision. When it was over, she sat up. "Please give me a mirror," she said. I handed her a mirror. She looked happily at her reflection, then smiled and said, "It was worth it." What wonderful people! Where else on earth could you find people like these? And just think of it, they are our people. "Dr. Rabbit, Dr. Rabbit." This time it was an old grandma who had waited patiently until the morning treatments were all over. Then when her turn came, she was speechless. She couldn't say a word. "Do you have a fever, Grandma?" I asked. "Oh, no, it's not that," she managed to say. "Well, maybe do you have sore eyes?" "Oh, no, it's not that." "Ah, then maybe it's ringworm." I named one of the most common ailments. "Oh, no, it's not that." But with this, her tongue was unloosed. "I'm starving, I tell you, I'm starving." Then followed this heartbroken story. My big son went to Moline to work for a sawmill, and he promised to send me back some money to buy rice. But he hasn't sent any money at all. "Does he write you any letters, Grandma?" I asked sympathetically. "Oh, yes. He has written many letters, and he says he is earning good wages." "And doesn't he send anything in those letters?" I persisted. "Only some crazy little bits of paper with English printing all over them." She was angry now. "But you can't buy rice with crazy little bits of paper. You've got to have money to buy rice. I tell you, I am starving." I was immediately suspicious about those crazy little bits of paper. So I said, "Grandma, you go home right now and get all those letters and all those crazy little bits of paper and bring them to me. I want to see them." The next morning she came with the letters, all wrapped up in a banana leaf. "There now," she said, "see for yourself." I looked, and sure enough, just as I suspected, every one of those crazy little bits of paper was a money order for 10 rupees. Grandma, I said, "each one of these crazy little bits of paper is worth 10 rupees. You just have to go to the post office and put your thumbprint on each one, and the postmaster will give you 10 rupees for each one." For a moment, Grandma was too dumbfounded for words. Then she gasped, "I can? He will?" Hugging her letters to her heart and trembling with excitement, she said, "Just to think of it. There I was, starving to death, with all this fortune in my hands." As she went away rejoicing, I wondered who was the happier, she or I. On another day there came an old man crying, "Dr. Rabbit, Dr. Rabbit, please tie a stick on my broken thumb and put some medicine on it. I broke it when I fell out of a coconut tree 10 days ago, and now it hurts so much and smells so bad." I took off the dirty rag that covered his hand and gasped. The broken part of the thumb was black and rotting off. Blood poisoning had set in, and angry red streaks were starting up his forearm. In alarm, I said, "Uncle, you must sit right down and let me cut off that thumb. It is dead. No medicine can cure that thumb now. If you don't cut it off, You will die along with it before many days." "No, no, doctor, put some medicine on it," he begged. "It's too late for medicine now," I urged. "If you had come 10 days ago, I could have put some medicine on it and tied it up with a stick, but it's too late now." "No, no, doctor, don't cut it off today." I thought maybe he didn't know that I could cut fingers off, so I reached up among my bottles and brought forth a finger I had cut off and had preserved in spirits. "Look, Uncle," I said, "I cut that off and it didn't hurt. I have medicine to make it painless, and I have the time to do it now. Come, sit down and let me cut off that dead thumb and save your life now." In spite of all I could say, he shook his head and said, "Not now, doctor, not now. There's a powerful witch doctor not far from my village. I'll try his medicine for 10 days, and then, if it's not better, I'll come and let you cut it off." Away he went, but he never came back. He died just 5 days later. When I heard it, I wept. I could have saved his life. I had the time. I had the medicine, but he was not willing. But my patients were not all like that. Indeed, they were not. One day I was on tour in the village of Abawa. Among those who crowded up into the schoolhouse for treatment, there came a man groaning with pain caused by a huge abscess on his wrist. Dr. Rabbit, he cried. "Quick, get your knife and cut it. Cut it deep and squeeze out all the pus." "It will hurt if I do that," I said seriously. "Never mind if it does hurt," he cried. "Come on, get your knife and cut it." "You're a strange man," I replied playfully. "Do you like for people to hurt you?" No, of course I don't," he said. "But I haven't been able to sleep or eat pleasantly for 10 days, and I am thinking about being able to sleep again and to eat pleasantly again. So come on, doctor, get your knife." "And you really want me to cut you and hurt you?" "Doctor, why do you wait?" he cried. "Do you fear I will make too much noise and move around too much? Then look, call those 6 big men over there and make them sit all over me. Then take your knife and cut. Cut deep." I did that very thing. I had the 6 big men set all over him, on his legs and on his stomach and on his arms. Then he gritted his teeth and said, "I'm ready, doctor. Now cut it." I have already told you that I know how to lance boils, but let me add right here that I have not learned how to lance boils painlessly. This day, as I lanced this poor man's abscess, it hurt, and he groaned with pain. "Shall I stop now?" I said, half in fun. No, doctor. Keep on until it's finished," he said. I probed and squeezed, and he groaned some more. "Shall I stop now?" I asked. No, keep on," he replied. I packed that abscess with a wick dipped in iodine. It was agony for him, and again he groaned. "Shall I stop now?" I asked again. No, doctor, keep on, he begged. At last it was all over. A clean bandage covered his hand. The 6 big men got off and moved away. He sat up, looked at his hand, then moved over beside me. He took my hand in his and the hand that had cut him and hurt him, and stroking it, he wept out in joy. Oh, thank you, Dr. Rabbit. Thank you so much. When I got home from that tour, I said to Mama Rabbit, we must have the most wonderful people in all the world to work for, and I love them so much. She said, I do too. I said, and just think, we get paid for all of this happiness. She said, shh, don't tell anyone, or we might be sent back home.